What if you could make a hill smaller simply by carrying a smaller pack? Or you could make a task less difficult simply by describing it differently. Well, you can. That's the power of perception. The adage that perception is our reality is true, but it's your reality, and it may not reflect the physical reality of the world. Stay tuned to learn more about how perception influences our decision, how our bodies shape our perception, and what this has to do with leading change. Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Dawn Marie Turner, president of Turner Change Management and creator of the Readiness Mindset. And this is the first installment of the Change Leaders Book Club. I am so excited to share and introduce you to this new series where I will share insights of some of my favorite books. Each one explores a topic which will help you create healthy and sustainable change. And I'm kicking off this first Change Leaders Book Club with perception, how our bodies shape our minds. It was written by Proffitt, a Commonwealth Professor Emeritus at the University of Virginia, and Baer, the deputy editor of the Business Insider. I had so many aha moments about enabling change when I read this book. Here, I want to share a few of my key insights from the book. One of the biggest ones is how this book raised my appreciation for the complexity and subjectiveness of our perception. It emphasized the idea that our perception doesn't accurately reflect the world, nor is it designed to do so. That's right. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. So if you've ever had a conversation with someone and heard yourself say, what world are they living in? They are living in their world, and you are living in your world. Your perception and mine are relative and highly subjective. Our physical body, language, emotions, beliefs all play a role in our perception of a task, an event, or situation, or just the world around us. Some of you may be familiar with the hills of San Francisco. They're somewhat iconic. When my husband and I visited a few years ago, I was blown away by how steep those hills were. In one case, we avoided walking the street and opted for the trolley when the hill just appeared way too steep. However, on another occasion, we decided to go for it. And I was surprised that walking what appeared to be a hill with almost a 50% incline wasn't as hard as I expected it to be. That's because it wasn't a 50% incline. Although some of those hills look to have a 50 to 60 degree slant, the reality is that many are less than a 20% incline, and almost everyone visually miscalculates that incline. Long thought an optical illusion, it turns out it's our physical condition that's causing our conscious perception to miscalculate the incline. That's the discovery that Dr. Proffitt made in his research. He found that people consistently overestimate on verbal and visual matching tasks that assess conscious perception. And that overestimation was big. A typical participant looking at a hill with a 5-degree incline would judge that incline to be about 20 degrees. Yet those same participants were accurate when they were asked to use, without looking, a tilt board and make it parallel to the incline of the hill. What accounted for the difference? Participants' perception of the hill incline was directly influenced by their belief about their walkability and or their capability of ascending the hill. Their bodies were influencing their perception. Participants were not seeing the hill as it was, but rather as they were. The impact of this on your organizational change efforts can be significant. Just like my husband and I avoided that first hill in San Francisco, if your team or employees perceive a change as physically or mentally beyond their capability, they'll perceive it as larger and more difficult, and that can affect their decision to move toward a new activity or doing something differently. I did a previous video about perceived capability, and I'll post it in the show notes below. Language also influences perception. Only when we have the words can we perceive our environment or a situation. Our language and vocabulary shape the way we think through a concept called linguistic relativity. For example, the authors noted that in almost every culture, up is considered good and down is interpreted as bad. However, language works in concert with our bodies. In a fascinating, rather novel study, people were asked to idly move marbles either up or down while telling stories about themselves. The participants moving the marbles up tended to tell positive stories, and the participants moving the marbles down tended to tell stories about bad luck and missed connections. Without even realizing it, the upward or downward movement was influencing the emotional tone of the stories the participants were telling. In another study, researchers demonstrated the influence of right and left dominance on language and then our perception. This is through a concept called fluency. Fluency is where thinking and perceiving merge. It's the feeling of thinking and perceiving. Researchers noticed that the word right is almost always associated with good, while left is often viewed as negative. For example, you have 2 left feet, or you get a left-handed compliment. In one experiment, participants were given a page with an image of a creature from outer space on the left and one on the right. And then they were asked to assign attributes to the creatures. Consistently, the participants gave the creatures on the right more positive attributes, while those on the left were given negative attributes. But it isn't just the language that's there, because if you're a lefty, then left is good, and you will tend to assign the positive attributes to the images on the left. What to me was even more interesting and has implications for change is that researchers discovered that when they took their experiments into the real world, that our dominant hand, without our conscious awareness, is subtly guiding our behavior. One of the first strategies I ask our clients to adopt when they're beginning to work with the readiness mindset is to remove the phrase resistance to change from the vocabulary and replace it with not ready yet. In almost every situation, when leaders adopt this strategy and they begin to use it, and I ask them what they discover, they describe that people seem to have stopped complaining or are complaining less. They notice people offering to help, and that others who seem to be resistant appear to be getting on board. What has changed is because of their language, they have changed the way they are perceiving the feedback and the response to their change differently. Human perception is also not designed for accuracy. That was another big aha I had reading this book. The purpose of human perception isn't to give us this true geometric, accurate read of our environment. It's to guide the way we think and act pragmatically. Therefore, there are limits to how much we can trust our perception of the world, and that our perception is correct and someone else's is wrong, or how everyone else sees the situation or event. There's no one or exact objective view of any situation. We see and interpret everything through our own filters, our body, our beliefs, our emotions, our desires. even our social groups and the context of the situation. That's why it's so important to question and challenge your perception consistently. Create an environment that explores different perceptions and makes decisions that are informed by multiple perceptions. Psychologists Albert Hastorf and Hadley Cantrell, they were curious about how two groups could see the same event completely differently. In the book, they describe it relative to a football game. And what they found was that through a concept called motivated reasoning, we see the world through our own mental models, filled with our own biases, emotions, desires, and beliefs. And that's why it's so essential when you're enabling change that you make time, space, and help people connect with the need and create the intended outcome story and allow for that story to become embedded in your organization. As we begin to understand how perceptions are formed and their influence on yours and mine and everyone's thinking and actions, you can consciously align your decisions, reduce unconscious bias, and reduce potential conflicts as you move towards something new and different. Let me know in the comment section if you've read this book and what your takeaway was. All right. That's it for now. I'll talk to you soon.